Welcome back, folks. MTG Joe here. Today we are covering the weekly meta breakdown, looking at the standard best of one format. We will try to get to as many formats this week as possible. We're starting to get more data in for best of three as well, so we'll try to cover that for the more eternal formats as well. We did cover pretty much everything historic, timeless, explore last week. At least some variation, best of one or best of three, but starting to show what's kind of being played in those formats. The Pro Tour is this weekend. There's a lot of decks. We did a video on that, so if you want to see what the pros brought for standard best of three, that video is up already. We'll give it a couple more days later into the week because I want to see how the Pro Tour kind of influences the arena ladder to give you kind of a breakdown and kind of perspective in terms of the popularity of decks, win rates, stuff of that nature. As always, we get the data from UntapkedGG, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client. It tracks your win rates, aggregates with other users, gives a whole bunch of cool stats. If you want to use Untapped, what you see on the screen, link is in the video description, but I will paste all these deck lists, timestamp them, and kind of go from there. So we will start with popularity of the day, and then we will look at the win rates. A popular deck doesn't necessarily correlate to a high win rate deck, but it's just a matter of what you're going to be seeing in terms of density of games, and then what's actually kind of performing fairly well. Before we jump into it, as always, you see in the top right-hand corner, for those new, we are trying to hit 15,000 subs on the channel. We're closing in on 12,500, trying to get there by June. So if you haven't subbed to the channel, free, easy, help support out the channel. Otherwise, likes and comments always go a long way to help support. Greatly appreciated if you can. So enough spiel. We're going to look so for popularity of the day, platinum to mythic, mono red. There's kind of two variations we'll focus on today, make up about 21-22% of the metagame. We have Boros Convoke at 7%, Azorius Control 6.2%. Mono black aggro, about 5, you got humans, the 4-color reanimators, the Rakdos joins up combo deck, and then mono black skeletons at like 4%. Just kind of looking, mono red's kind of just diverged into one singular aggro deck, into two kind of, they are two distinct decks. There's some overlap in the cards, but the manner in which they play is slightly different. So we're seeing that split. You see Convoke taking a pretty large drop, but seeing like mono white slowly creep up, and then the Azorius Control slowly kind of creep up as well. So if we're looking at the decks itself, we got 440,000 games of Magic played between April 20th and the 27th. 100 game cap, and we'll look platinum to mythic rank. The highest win rate deck is mono red aggro. So this is the aggro, not prowess version. The prowess version is not sequentially the next highest win rate, but I'm going to compare and contrast the two decks side by side just because it's relevant to kind of see what's different, what's the same between them. So 63% for this particular version. A couple of choices that's a little unique to this list. We see the Urbrass Forge being played in the main deck. This is usually a card that's just stellar in mid-range battles in best of three. One of my favorite cards. This card has won me single-handedly more games in best of three than any other card in mono red. It's opting to go 3 Godric, 1 Squee. So the Forge can play nicely with Godric since it could be one of the two triggers. A couple Witch Stalkers. You have the Lightning Strikes in here, play with fires. 3 Monstrous Rage, a couple of Voldaren Epicures in here. You're playing fewer lands. Usually you'll see 22 to 23. Playing 21 here, and then a split of 3-3-2 within your 2 drops. Looking at the mono red prowess, it was at 60.9, so a couple shades lower. So the difference here, you're using kind of more hasty, big spell kind of version. Just words are away with me sometimes. Slickshot Show Off is the kind of premier card of the deck. It can be plotted, and then you just pump out huge damage the following turn. Fugitive Codebreaker, another prowess threat that can provide some card advantage with the flip. Demonic Ruckus gives you trample and pseudo evasion, can be plotted, so just another free spell that you can stack up for a massive turn. This deck puts a lot of pressure on your opponent to not tap out, because usually one connection with Slickshot is enough to win the game. You have Ancestral Angers, Scamps can be thrown at your opponent, Rages, just a whole bunch of burn kind of mixed into here. 18 lands in this particular variant. You then go to Boros Convoke, 61.5%. So the biggest kind of, I would say literally the biggest bonus to this deck is getting Inspiring Vantage. The mana base was terrible in this deck. This deck is pretty close to just being a Pioneer legal deck in Standard, which is crazy in terms of power level of the deck. You still get like Sacred Foundry and stuff, but Inspiring Vantage, very big in terms of power level here. We see them fully moving off War Leader's Call, just playing the full Sanguine Evangelist and Imidane's Recruiter. And the lists have started to pick up the Pixie here. So another 1-drop. What this can do is reset like your Novice Inspectors, your Epicures. This picks up any non-land permanent, so you can reset your Case, you can reset Knights, Imidane, Sanguine. So there's a lot of value that can be had with this. And it just becomes a 1-mana 2/2 flyer, which in a deck that's trying to push damage, it lets you go pseudo-evasive with the flying to kind of push through the damage there. This one's a sweet one. Azorius Artifacts, 61.5. So a card that is being picked up a lot in Legacy, some in Modern. Simulacrum Synthesizer. So 3 mana, enters the battlefield, scry 2. Whenever you cast an artifact of mana value 3 or greater, you basically get a construct. This is seen a lot of play in Eternal formats because you have affinity, so you could play any of like the big like Frogmite, I think it is, like the 6-7 mana affinity creatures that just become 0 to 1 mana. You have like Mox Opal, stuff like that in those formats. But what you're trying to leverage in this format is things like Thousands Moon Smithy, another way to make big tokens, Mightstone Meekstone removal, Unstable Glyph Bridge as removal. So these also give you creatures with the Simulacrum out. Steel Seraph in here that gives evasion. You have some ramp removal with the Springload Saw Blades. Early kind of blockers with Market Gnome. Fabrication Modules, another ramp effect. Braided Net can trigger it while also being kind of Fog. And then Threatened Spider in here as well. That helps you kind of ramp up with the Power Stone token. So really sweet, sweet deck, innovative deck there. Then move to 4-color Reanimator or Abuela combo. Abuelo, not Abuela. 61%. So this is a self-mill deck. You want to mill over, and then what you do is you have a Rakdos joins up in your graveyard, you have a Hulking Metamorph in your graveyard. You use Abuela's Reckoning to reanimate Rakdos joins up. It becomes a creature in addition to its other types. The Rakdos joins up brings a Hulking Metamorph into play. The Hulking Metamorph becomes a copy of the Rakdos joins up. Legend rule, the Hulking Metamorph dies. It deals damage. The trigger from the Rakdos joins up copy comes into play. You bring back Hulking Metamorph, repeat, 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 and then just burn your opponent out that way there. Otherwise, it's just self-mill, and then ways to gain some life, and then some removal mixed in. So another kind of sweet combo deck here. We have Azorius Control. So not too much in terms of innovation, not really seeing any new cards in this. The most I've seen with some of these Azorius decks is they're playing the new Spree counterspell that we're seeing. I've seen Konsuli's Flanker, good against like graveyard removal, can gain you some life and scry. Good against like the ramp decks, this Abuela combo deck kind of mixed into there. Otherwise, just lots of cheap interaction, temporary lockdown, Sunfalls, Farewells, Jace to mill out, Wandering Emperors, win conditions, and then you have your creature lines as well in there. You like blue-white control, and some one angle to attack the metagame. We have 5-color Domain. We've seen Domain before, but this one's got a couple new cards in it. So different kind of take. We have Ancient Cornucopia. So 3 mana from Big Score. Why this card's a mythic, who knows? But, you know, got to spend your mythic wild cards in this economy. But whenever you cast a spell that's 1 or more colors, you gain a life for each of those colors. So Traxa now gains you 4 life on cast while being a 7/7, which is pretty sweet. And then it adds 1 mana of any color. So helps you ramp up. Lightning Helix now gains you 5 life. You have Teferi, slows the sunset. That plays with these artifacts to kind of untap tap to gain you some mana, gain you life. It populates, Sunfalls, Leyline Binding. So kind of the core. The back end combos, once you generate enough mana, if you have 10 mana, you can Herd Migration and cast Imidane's Recruiter the same turn to give everything haste and big power. So you become kind of the big Convoke deck. You know, your opponent's playing these 1/1s and you're just like, you're my 3/3 beast with haste. Moving on, we go to Grixis Crime. Yeah, it's called Grixis Crime. 58% Grixis Legends. We have Tiny Bones joins up whenever so basically a discard effect when it comes in, and then whenever a legendary comes into play, you get to mill a card from your opponent or target player, generally your opponent, and then they lose a life. This also triggers a crime. You have Phantom Interference, just a flexible counterspell that makes a token as well. Duresses, you have cut downs, go for the throats, Lazav in here. When it attacks, you can exile a card from a graveyard, then investigate. So this is a crime when you target the graveyard. Crimes give Magda treasure tokens, sack 3 treasures, make a 4/4 flying dragon with haste. Vadmir, another way with crimes that pays off, gets bigger, gets lifelink. Shoot the Sheriff as removal, Trespasser touching the graveyard, Lord Skitter touching the graveyard, all ways to trigger crimes. You have Laughing Jasper that can provide some card advantage off your opponent's deck. And then Urtais, and then Gisa Hellraiser on the top end. So lots of ways to take advantage of crime, a lot of removal in here. Kind of a base black deck, splashing a little red, a little blue along the way. The only card I'm a little uncertain about is this Phantom Interference. Seems a little niche, but even Duress could be kind of hit or miss. I think I would rather just play more cut downs main if it was me. We then move to Izzet Prowess. So we have 57%. A card that I cannot get enough of is Case of the Crimson Pulse. If you want to see an insane game with this card, so I was playing Gruul Prowess in Historic, playing against Jeskai Control, Jeskai Magma Opus, Settle the Wreckage. I drew about 15 more cards than my opponent with this case and just outgrinded a deck drawing multiple cards per turn, Magma Opusing, Settle the Wreckaging, all that jazz. But this deck here, we got Eidetic Memory, enters battlefield, draws a card, no max hand size, beginning of combat. Basically, if you've drawn more than one card this turn, you put X1 counter. So soups up your thing. We have Slickshot Show Off, we have Ledger Shredder, we have Elusive Otter, we have Swift Spear, and then just a whole bunch of cheap spells. Considers, Fading Hopes, Angers in here, Slick Sequence with the double spell, all kind of paired up with the deck itself. We got Spire Bluff in here. Easiest addition in your life, add an Otawara, add a Sokazan, add maybe a Mirex, and you're golden. And then the last deck, Jeskai Control, 56.5. So what are we getting in Jeskai? It's basically a blue-white control deck with Lightning Helix available. A little bit bigger on the Wandering Emperors. Like I mentioned, 3 Steps Ahead is a card that's being seen some play. Saw it a little bit in some Pioneer lists as well. With this deck, it's interesting because you're making your mana base much worse. You're seeing a bunch of duels, pain lands, stuff like that, just for access to Helix. It may be worthwhile in best of 3. I think just having the cleaner mana is probably worthwhile. There's enough removal options. You do also have access to High Noon, so each player can't play more than 1 card per turn. Very good against these Prowessy style shells. Kind of locks them out that way, and then can be removal on its own. But interesting kind of concept there. Otherwise, you have your usual temporary lockdowns, Emperors, Sunfalls, stuff like that mixed in. So that is it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been enjoying, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.